Hello, Mark. It's nice to see you today in online interview. How are you?
I'm fine, Regina. Thank you very much. I hope you're well too.
Yes, I'm very well. So I want to introduce you that today here we have Mark Carter. He is Consultant Director for Business Development at Yokogawa Wrap Limited. So in 2019, Wrap International was acquired by Yokogawa company, and now it's like already around a year, yes, since the company became Yokogawa Wrap. Could you please tell me, Mark, how this idea of acquisition with Yokogawa was occurred from the very beginning?
We obviously faced competition as other entrants came into the market as well, and I think that a lot of those entrants were bigger organisations than ourselves and able to develop things more quickly. And as you know, if you're not first, you're last sometimes nowadays. So we really needed to be able to develop more quickly. So we were looking around for partners. And as I say, we began the acquisition process.
Can you name me three main points, positive changes that you can see after acquisition?
The best bit, really, I think, is the ability for us to continue with the ideas that we have. We have far more resource available to us now, and in those 25 years that we've been running, we've developed loads and loads of ideas, some of which we've put into practice, but others we've just had to put on the shelf and weren't able to do it. I think everybody is really looking forward to seeing those ideas come to fruition.
What are the new projects you have already launched after the acquisition? Is there any?
Various elements of software have been acting in isolation. So your control system is your control system. Your control work system is something else totally. So we're beginning to see how we can integrate these systems to get a complete package, because we also have other organizations within the Yokogawa corporation as well, who act as consultants to various areas. Then we're able to incorporate some of that consulting knowledge into the product as well. And again, some of those ideas that were on the shelf are actually working now as well. So it's going to be really good when it comes.
Yeah, while I was studying the details about your company, I found a Wrap Insight number 1. It looks like always have an eye for risk. And I was interested, well, from the very beginning, as an original developer of the Wrap system for safe control, and risk assessment, why you decided to start with the risk assessment?
I think we can, all of us in the UK, point to one really significant event back in 1988, the Piper Alpha disaster, really. 167 people were killed. There are many outcomes of that, really, but it did change the look of health and safety within the UK, and I guess eventually the world. I always saw that you really needed to put risk assessment right at the very heart of what you were doing. A lot of people then and even now see risk assessment as a sort of adjunct to what they're doing. They say, right, I need all this to do my job. I need this bit. I need this bit. Oh, I need a risk assessment as well. And they keep it in that little compartment, and it doesn't really affect the job they're doing. What we did was to get that risk assessment and make it the heart and soul of the process, and allow that risk assessment to inform the user as to exactly what they needed to do to keep themselves safe.
When you start managing the company, it was 1994. And by the way, that time I was only 4 years old. So it's quite a long period of time. And now the oil and gas industry changed, the safety segment changed as well. Could you please tell me these changes, is it a significant difference between that time and today's?
When I was a younger engineer, every site, every factory had a medical centre, and that medical centre was often staffed by full-time nurses, perhaps even full-time doctors as well, depending on the size of the site. And I guess really that was an admission that accidents were going to happen. They were expected. And I think that the world has really changed since then. That expectation of accidents happening has been very well supplanted in terms of making sure that they don't happen. I think the reason for that really, obviously, is the experiences that we've been through, the legislation that has come through into the world, whereby now managers and directors of large companies are personally responsible for the safety and well-being of their employees. That legislation has been beginning to bite.
You say it yourself, the regulations become to bite, yeah? So they can bite you now. And speaking about your company, you need to adapt to these conditions. You need to adapt your product to these conditions. Was it difficult to keep up with the market demand?
The fact that people are doing more and more safety-related activities within their work means that you have to develop the software to become much easier, much more intuitive to use. In the early days, and perhaps for some organizations now, the risk assessment, the safety elements that they have to do are seen as a little bit of a barrier to actually doing the job. Now we have a saying which is compliance as a matter of routine. What you really want to do is to allow your product and make sure that your product fits into the overall job that somebody's doing. So it's a natural part of that job and doesn't represent the barriers.
Speaking about the RAP in general, what was the most important project for your company during its history, 25 years?
I think, I mean, the first thing really, I guess, was the development of the knowledge base that supports RAP, really. I think if I just go back to a little bit of the history, perhaps back in 1994, the whole of the industry was going through what was termed downsizing. Every Friday afternoon, you'd see people walking up the road, never to come back into the organization again, and taking all that knowledge and that experience with them. We saw this as a really big problem, so we put in place a project to try and capture all of that knowledge, safety knowledge that these people had, in all aspects of the maintenance work that they were doing, and not just really to capture that knowledge, to make it easily available to the people who came along later to be able to use it. Of course, then you have to devise a system then by which that knowledge base can be put to use, and I guess that effectively was the RAP system. And then again, I guess the next biggest one was taking that knowledge base and converting it into different languages. I think that's one that gave us a lot of satisfaction. So you have all this knowledge that we've accumulated. There's thousands of man-years of experience in there, and to be able then to convert that into different languages, so that people across, if you're a multinational site, you can all share in that knowledge.
So, Mark, I was going to ask, am I right in thinking that right now you are talking about a huge project you've had with a lubricants company, yeah?
Yes, yeah, indeed.
Okay,
yeah.
And so all in all, could you please tell me the main result of this project which you're proud of? What is that?
I think it was back in the early days of RAP, really, and I think it actually did encompass those two elements that I said, the application of the knowledge base and the different languages. We took the system across, I think it was 26 locations across the world, 20 different languages. And we developed the knowledge base at their headquarters.
Pandemic makes an influence on the companies, and how do you think the segment of oil and gas, is there any changes in the business, in approach to business in general?
A lot of companies have internalized what they're doing, looking to see how they can do things better. And as a result, I think we've probably had more inquiries during the COVID period, and I probably met more people in that COVID period than I have in any other single period before. Obviously not in person, but I probably have seen their faces at least. So we've seen a real upturn in interest, and as a result, have quite a pipeline of potential sales.
What are the most valuable insights you've made during this period for your job?
There are expansive people and there are quiet people in this world. And when you have an office, you're going to get both types of people really, and it's easy to keep in touch with the quiet people. You can have a little quiet word with them. You can bump into them, talk to them at their desk, etc., etc. You have to actively make sure that you do something now in order to make sure that these quiet people, that their voice is being heard, and that they are feeling that they are contributing.
Mark, you as a top manager, what are your tips to keep the remote staff still efficient?
Well, before the pandemic, we were putting systems in place for people to be able to work from home. We were already addressing that balance, that people require for their working and for their home lives. So we already had a lot of infrastructure available. In addition, I think that because of the nature of the work that we do, you need to make sure that if portions of work are allocated to people, that needs to be recorded. You need to understand how long the person is taking to do that, and of course, then you need to understand whether what they've done is right or needs correction. And all of that really is bread and butter to most software development companies. So it was very easy for us to make sure that people were behaving efficiently.
How did the COVID-19 pandemic affect your current and future projects?
Okay, as I said, when the pandemic started, I mean the world just held its breath and everything stopped for a month or so. Some major projects, and again, those projects that were still in the pipeline would have stopped as well. We're beginning to see those happen now, but I think the types of projects that are coming through are the ones that are looking at internal efficiencies, better ways of working, digitalization, of course, and I think that those are things that you can do as an organization much more easily than you can, obviously, the big engineering changes that you need to make. So that's one of the big differences I think that we've seen coming from the clients. And again, I would say that when we do talk to the clients, whereas once upon a time a system like control of work, you're never really sure whether it's the IT person you need to talk to, whether it's the HSE person you need to talk to, maintenance guys, operations guys, planners, and I think very often when you first try to come into an organisation, you can be you have to knock on several doors at several occasions. I think the pandemic has actually made that easier. You can get far more people together more easily, I think, in one place in order to arrive at the right person.
COVID-19 is a risk for the safety of the employees. That's why I decided that definitely your clients should go ahead with all of their projects and maybe ask for some more attention from your side in order to be able to continue their job and do their job in these conditions. Am I right?
Indeed, yeah. I mean, as part of the knowledge base, we developed a condition icon for COVID-19 itself. Which, by the way, we gave to free to all of our clients. I think if we tried to sell it, then maybe it would have taken too long, and it might not have been as effective. So the knowledge base we derive from discussions with many of our clients, and it concerned things like, how do you get people to the work sites on large sites? They've got to be driven there, perhaps. How do you separate the driver from the guys when they're actually working? Are they gonna buddy up? Are they gonna keep that buddy system? Are they gonna work back to back? All sorts of things that we could put into that knowledge base that people could use to develop their own ways of working from that. So that was very useful, I think.
I want to go to the next part with the questions about your career. And I know that you have a wide range of experience as a top manager in the company and managing of the team. And I'm interested to know, so what are the key characteristics of a high potential employee for you?
A person's attitude is probably one of the most important things they can have. And by attitude, I mean the willingness to put those skills to use. For good use, for the use of the company, the attitude to be able to work with others, to be able to sometimes put themselves in the background as well, because you can't always be out front. And I think an attitude, as I say, an attitude to make sure the whole is enabled, but to play their part within that. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I would look for next to the skill set that people have, of course.
And you as a top manager, you prefer to grow your employee from the junior level, or you like to work with the skilled professionals?
It's both, really. IT people, that when we employ them, I think that they have their ideas as to what they want to do, but we must never lose focus on the fact that it's a product at the end of the day that's going to keep people safe. And I think that we're able to inculcate that into young graduates, in particular, and to get them performing really effectively for us. I mean, there are a couple of cases in point there. We had two guys, both fresh from university. After 6 or 7 years, one of those guys was able to stand in front of a hall full of refinery maintenance guys and tell them how their new isolation system was, their energy isolation system was going to work. I must admit, I was very proud at that time. It was a good system.
That sounds very inspiring. And just finalizing this topic, what are the 3 principles you're following as a top manager while working with your team?
As I say, it changes along along the life of the company, and I think initially when you're first starting out, you want to to be able to inspire. You want to be able to take people with you. You want to be able to show them what the product is, what it can do, etc., etc. And over the years, then that translates really into how now can we make these people self-sufficient and be able to do that themselves, to have a firm idea and an identity of what the product and the company is. I think that's when you're starting a company, you really need to have a sort of keen sense of awareness of the theatre in which you are operating. You need to know every little nuance about what's going on, because then you can identify the gaps, the ideas that you need to do to take things forward. So I think that gaining that appreciation of how things work and what the working environment is like is another thing I think that we've tried to imbue into our people as we go on, to make them very savvy, very aware of the requirements of the industry. And I think we've been very successful in.
What was the hardest decision you made during your career?
Oh gosh, yeah, I think having to let people go must rank there really. It's a very difficult thing to do, and I guess it's an admission of failure on both parts as well. So it's never very easy, but I think that once the decision is made, it's best to do it as quickly as you can to avoid it disrupting everybody else. I think in terms of well, gosh, what about starting the company? It was a difficult decision. Well, it was and it wasn't. I guess at the age of 40, with 3 young children, embarking on your own to have an idea and have a will to get that idea out there. I guess that was a difficult decision, probably more difficult for my wife to sell the company. Really, I guess that was a decision that took a long time to come to. But I'm utterly convinced that it was the right decision in the end, and a very good one to make.
Well, now a huge experience you've had, and you led your company to a success. Now you're part of a huge corporation like Yokogawa. What are the main skills that led you to this success?
Again, as I say, I think it's that knowledge of the sphere in which you are operating. I think that's key. I mean, you often hear of sports people when they're talking. When they've been asked, well, why are they so good? And they say they have this mental model of what's going on around them. They know the position of all the other players. They know what they're going to do next, and they react accordingly. And I think that to have a skill like that is a good thing to be able to move forward based on your surroundings. I think that's a good skill. And obviously, you have to have the confidence then really to back yourself to say, well, yes, this is a good idea. So as I say, that awareness, that confidence, I think the ability to again, as I said, in the early stages, to inspire other people is a key element. And I think in the IT industry as well, especially in one like ours, where the knowledge retained within the organization is very important, to be able to keep people working with you. I mean, I mentioned those two young graduates. I mean, 15, 16 years they've been with us now, which is quite unusual in the IT industry, really. I think so. Yeah, the ability to create the company that you want is a key skill too.
You said about the confidence, that it is one of the really important things. But at the very beginning, when you just start, can you say that you've had this confidence at that time or not?
No, blind ignorance, I think, is what it was, Richard. I think that I think that we all look at risk in different ways, don't we? I think we can all do a risk assessment, but we can all come up with different answers unless you have a superb knowledge base behind it that will tell you what to do, really. So I think that I had an idea, and I was convinced of this idea, but that idea was set within that sphere of operation, and I knew it would work. Now, perhaps conviction is a better word than confidence, maybe. As I say, I was convinced that the idea would work.
EGS Group job is event organization, and we are working with different types of industries, and oil and gas industry is one of them. You are the sponsor, the principal sponsor for the third time in PRC Europe event, which is dedicated to Petrochemical and Refining Congress. And the first time you were offline in Budapest, and the second time this year you were online, supposed to be in Austria, Vienna, but it was online. I wanted to ask you, do you think there is any difference between on-site and online event?
Oh yes, I mean there is a big difference. I think that we had such a good event in Budapest. I think being able to open the conference, I think was really great. Set the scene really well. I think we're able, again, I've said the importance about face to face to meet people, and we picked up very many opportunities. Of course, when we go online, the face to face bit disappears, then all of the opportunities, say, to do some network, not just networking, actually socializing with people too, are lost a little bit. So the dinner and some of the lunchtime events, which were very good too, at the Budapest conference, those obviously disappear. But I think that the system that you put in place to make sure what we lost in spontaneity, we gained in organisation, was very good, and we still were able to make contact with people and gain some good leads too.
Well, speaking about the platform, you were using it yourself, and it is interesting for me to know what are the key features you've liked regarding the platform we developed.
I like the certainty of it all, really. I know it sounds a little bit odd, but the fact that you had meetings to definitely go to, people would definitely attend. They would be briefed, they would respond to what it was you were going to say, they knew what you were going to talk about, and that sort of clears the ground a little bit. So it makes the conversations far more fruitful, really, really very successful.
Thank you very much. And anyway, these virtual type of negotiations, do you find these successful at the end?
When you knock on doors, you're not always going to meet the right person that you wanted to meet. So it was, I think, much easier to get in touch with the right person when we had those specific negotiations to do. And we were always referred if they weren't, we were always referred very quickly to the people that we did need to speak to. So yeah, very successful.
Have you been able to get some useful connections for further negotiations after the event?
Oh, absolutely, and I mean 100%. I think, because of the online nature, we're probably able to get in front of more people really than just the face-to-face meetings. Burgeoning pipeline of inquiries as a result of the conference.
I'm absolutely happy to hear that, because it is the main goal we set in front of ourselves before the event. Yeah. And I guess you must probably know that next year PRC Europe 2021 edition is an anniversary one. It will be 5th Congress, and we will have lots of activities like celebration, gala dinner, awards, giveaways and special events. And it will be really the 3rd time you are taking place in our event as a main sponsor, as a principal sponsor. I was interested to know, why did PRC Europe become the must-attend event for you?
Every company has to make decisions as to where they're going to put their marketing money, really. We have tried several events and types of activities to do this. We keep a keen tally of how successful these events have been for us. I think the Budapest event was by far the best event that we've been to in terms of potential. So it was an easy decision for us, really.
Thank you so much for this great interview and this great talk. It was a pleasure for me.
Well, it was a pleasure for me as well.